Welcome to the Zenaida Moya Show, brought to you through the courtesy of Universal Hardware, Smart Belize, Belize Electricity Limited, and of course, Moya Shepherd and Company Limited. I am your host, Zenaida Moya, and it's once again a pleasure to be here tonight. We have a very informative, a very educational, and a very important show. Tonight, we will be having as our guest Mr. Derek Aikman. He is no stranger to Belize. He is a graduate of St. Thomas University and he holds a master's degree in human resources management with emphasis on leadership and training. He was the first and only person to ever defeat the sitting Prime Minister, the Right Honorable George Cadle Price, a feat he did on 14th December 1984 in the Freetown Division under the United Democratic Party. Derek later became the Minister of Education, Tourism, Youth and Culture under the United Democratic Party, and he was touted heavily as one day becoming the next leader of the United Democratic Party. While the UDP did not win the general election in 1989, Derek again won his constituency in the Freetown Division. But while in opposition, he, along with the then Albert area representative, Honorable Philip Golson, and I believe also Mr. Hubert Errington and Samuel Rayburn, they had disagreed with the support of the Maritime Areas Bill and had broke away from the United Democratic Party and joined the newly formed National Alliance for Belizean Rights NABER. It was a new party in January 1992 under the leadership of the then Honorable Philip Golson. As fate would have it, however, and according to the Mandala newspaper, dated 29 May 2007, in what may be one of the few times both political parties colluded on the elimination of a threat, the UDP and the PUP worked to ensure that Aikman lost his seat in the late 1992 by being declared a bankrupt when the Belize Bank uncharacteristically called his loan, which he could not service in its entirety. Having Derek Aikman declared bankrupt enabled them to expel him from the House of Representatives in December 1992. Mr. Aikman became the first Belizean area representative to leave office midterm since independence. And while he did rejoin the UDP in 1998, he was given the division of the then entrenched Fort George area representative and People's United Party leader Honorable Said Musa to contest in 1998 during a wave of hate and dislike for the United Democratic Party. Needless to say, Derek was soundly defeated and he later became a social activist and a business owner. Derek, however, is now the current president of Bufford, Belizeans United for Equal Rights at Home and the Diaspora. It's an entity he will inform us about during the show, and he will also be discussing the outcome of a very important voting simulation exercise that Bufford successfully executed exactly 2 weeks ago on Wednesday, 13 September at the St. Mary's Parish Hall in Belize City. Welcome to the show, Derek.
Hi, Zenaida. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure and an honor. Good night, television listeners, as well as our diasporans that are able to live stream.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they are.
Good night to all my buffered members out in the diaspora. It's such a pleasure to be with you tonight in this fashion.
Yes, so Derek, we have a lot to talk about tonight. It is a 1-hour show though, and so we'll have to try and get in as much as we can.
Sure.
But before we do anything, I really need you to explain to those persons who may not know what is buffered, what it is, its purpose, and why it came about, and who can or cannot be a member.
Okay, very well. The acronym buffered, BUFERHD, stands for Belizeans United for Equal Rights at Home and the Diaspora. And to be honest, Zenaida, this came about just because of a report I got one afternoon. I think it was May the 19th, I believe. Brother Nuri, as you know, on Thursdays and Fridays, dedicates his show to the diaspora. Yes. And I got some very unflattering reports from some friends who said that they had listened to the show that day. I had not. And that there was quite a unpleasant exchange, for want of a better word, between Belizeans who were calling in the show at home, yes, and Belizeans in the diaspora who were also calling from the States. And it was as though we as a people were fighting against each other in a public way like that. And it disturbed me. And then that night, I had some friends at my home, and the matter came up. And to my surprise, one of my very good friends was so anti the diaspora. I mean, this brother was bitter against Belizeans who are living abroad in relation to them coming back and wanting to involve themselves in our local politics. And I couldn't understand. My wife and I really challenged him, but I was amazed at the bitterness, the degree of bitterness against the diaspora coming from this friend. And so I went to sleep that night very disturbed. You know, I didn't, the reports earlier the day on Krem was not pleasant, and then to be followed that same night by a similar display in my own home. Yes. It really bothered me, and I felt that, wow, if there is such a force out there anti the diaspora, then those of us who support them need to come out with a force too in support of them. And so I wrote a post that morning on my Facebook page saying basically that, you know, that I had heard this report, I hadn't heard the program myself, but that I didn't think that spoke well for us as a people, that we need to unite as Belizeans. Our country is in such a crisis. We need every single Belizean to solve our problem. This is no time for us to be fighting each other. And I'm a product of the diaspora. If my parents had migrated to the States and I don't know what would have become of me. My mother used to wash clothes at the then Fort George Hotel for $7 a week was her salary. My dad used to work on the cargo ships, you know, and so they left. And had they not gone, I don't know what my future would have been like. So I support the diaspora not only on principle, but I identify with them because my life has been the product of a diaspora life. And I think so when that post went out that day, there was no intention to form any organization. It was just to voice how I felt. Okay. But then the reaction that I got back from people signaled that they too would like for there to be some unity between us rather than this fighting that apparently has been going on for some time. I wasn't aware of this. And so, long story short, 2 days later, on the 23rd of May, just 2 days after my post, we were at the place where 17 people, those are the founding members for history of Buffett, 17 people. The first guy is a man out of Austin, Tennessee, some part of Tennessee. I think his name is Austin something. Was the first one to sign up. And so by the end of that day, we had 17 founding members. Buffett was not the original name. It was some derivative of Bufford. But then we kind of fine-tuned it in the days to come because we realized that the rights of the diaspora are really rights that we right here in Belize don't enjoy. Yes. And so Belizeans at home we need to fight for rights of Belizeans at home as well as in the diaspora. And that's how it got started. 3 months later, we are 321 members strong. Some people say, that I don't have. And I say yes, but that's 321 strong members, because unlike other Facebook entities where people are just allowed at random to sign up as many people to be members as they want, that's not how Buffett operates. Our membership has got to be a conscious decision taken by a Belizean that they have studied Buffett, they like what we stand for, and they want to be a part, and so they request to join. Nobody's ever turned away, but I think it's important that the membership is based on conscious decisions by Belizeans who decide, I want to buy into this, and so I want to be a member. And then they're automatically processed as members, and they join.
Okay, all right. And we'll definitely have to have a show again about the diaspora and them wanting to, not all of them, because I have seen, and I had a show that did discuss the reasoning and so forth as it regards some of those from the diaspora who are against and who are in support of persons from the diaspora being able to come, return to Belize to run for elected office.
Right.
I believe that at the time what was discussed also is not, I don't know if people are against them, more so that there needs to be certain things in place. For example, it's not expected that you just come 2017 and you expect to run for office 2018. And what it seemed was that is what certain key individuals are looking at. You come this area, and next year you ought to be able to run, when in fact you may not really grasp. It's okay to be over there in the US or wherever in the world and say you understand Belize, but nothing is when you are here feeling it, actually feeling it with the people, actually being on the ground and understanding the challenges that are happening right here in our country. It's easy for you to be over there and be able to speak and talk, and you get there and you take an hour. Sometimes people have jobs whereby it seems that they can talk all day. You see them immediately. I see certain individuals and they're able to just be able to text and message and everything you say, and then they're right there, and you call them trollers. Trollers, I believe that's the word you call them. I don't know how they do it, but apparently they get paid or they get to do it. They have a job that allows them to do that. But I see for and against, and I believe that those against, they're looking at, all right, put certain measures in place so that it's on a level playing field. You understand? Because that individual may be able, for example, to have access to more resources than someone in Belize who have spent all their life being a social activist, social or political or whatever activist, community activist, actually doing works for the people here in Belize. But he or she may not have the resources or cannot bring the resources from abroad, the way how maybe that individual may be able to secure because of his name or his affiliation with certain key members here in society, who he gets to nod and say, okay, I'll come here and I'll vote or whatever. And so they're not on a level playing field. And that is one of the contentions with fairness, but that will be another show, Derek, because we have a lot to talk about in terms of the simulation, but we'll
if I
have to bring that in.
If I just take 1 second to stick one pin, though, I think, in fairness to the diaspora, and having regard for everything you've just said, which I clearly understand
and not everybody, because some of the diasporans do not support it. It's some of them who do not support. I see them.
But I think, in fairness to the diasporans, what they're saying, though, that when you look at the prohibition that is placed on them as natural-born Belizeans, when citizens of other country, hate to say Guatemala being one of them, who are not born here, but can come here and aspire for the same office without having to give up their citizenship. But Belizeans, on the other hand, if they are to run for that same office, would have to give up their naturalized status. So there's lots to go back and forth on. But I think,
Yes.
like you said, Zenaida, it's a healthy debate. I think it is one that has to be vented fully. But
and some persons are ready to support them, but with certain measures in place. Not 1 year, okay, you come here this year and next year you're already running, and you don't know why they're running. You don't know because you've never seen them before. You've never, or maybe they come once a year, once every 3 years, 5 years, whatever it is, and they come and okay, they have nice finances, they have quite nice links to the whichever party, and so they come in, and we see that. We have seen that. We have seen certain individuals brought in from abroad to run in particular areas in Belize. They have not been successful, but because they're favorites of, let's say, the party leader, they come in, and that's what has happened. We have seen that. That is not something new. They've come in. They have not won. So, but you look at why they were brought in, and you look at what were they doing before in Belize, and you see they weren't doing anything. They were not doing anything, but when they came, because they have this... Welcome to the Zenaida Moya Show, brought to you through the courtesy of Universal Hardware, Smart Belize, Elite Electricity Limited, and of course, Moya and Company Limited. I am your host, Zenaida Moya, and it's once again a pleasure to be here tonight. We have a very informative, a very educational, and a very important show. Tonight, we will be having as our guest Mr. Derek Aikman. He is no stranger to Belize. He is a graduate of St. Thomas University, and he holds a master's degree in human resources management with emphasis on leadership and training. He was the first and only person to ever defeat the sitting Prime Minister, the Right Honorable George Cadle Price, a feat he did on 14 December 1984 in the Freetown Division under the United Democratic Party. Derek later became the Minister of Education, Tourism, Youth and Culture under the United Democratic Party, and he was touted heavily as one day becoming the next leader of the United Democratic Party. While the UDP did not win the general election in 1989, Derek again won his constituency in the Freetown Division. But while in opposition, he, along with the then Albert area representative, Honorable Philip Wilson, and I believe also Mr. Hubert Errington and Samuel Rayburn, they had disagreed with the support of the Maritime Areas Bill and had broke away from the United Democratic Party and joined the newly formed National Alliance for Belizean Rights Neighbor. That was a new party in January 1992 under the leadership of the then Honorable Philip Golson. As fate would have it, however, and according to the Mandala newspaper, dated 29 May 2007, in what may be one of the few times both political parties colluded on the elimination of a threat, the UDP and the PUP worked to ensure that Aikman lost his seat in the late 1992 by being declared a bankrupt when the Belize Bank uncharacteristically called his loan, which he could not service in its entirety. Having Derek Aikman declared bankrupt, enabled them to expel him from the House of Representatives in December 1992. Mr. Aikman became the first Belizean-era representative to leave office midterm since independence. And while he did rejoin the UDP in 1998, he was given the division of the then entrenched Fort George area representative and People's United Party leader Honorable Said Musa to contest in 1998 during a wave of hate and dislike for the United Democratic Party. Needless to say, Derek was soundly defeated, and he later became a social activist and a business owner. Derek, however, is now the current president of Bufford, Belizeans United for Equal Rights at Home and the Diaspora. It's an entity he will inform us about during the show, and he will also be discussing the outcome of a very important voting simulation exercise that Bufford successfully executed exactly 2 weeks ago on Wednesday, 13 September at the St. Mary's Parish Hall in Belize City. Welcome to the show, Derek.
Hi, Zenaida. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure and an honor. Good night, radio, television listeners, as well as our diasporans that are able to live stream.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, they are.
Good night to all my Bufford members out in the diaspora. It's such a pleasure to be with you tonight in this fashion.
Yes. So, Derek, we have a lot to talk about tonight. It is a 1 hour show though, and so we'll have to try and get in as much as we can.
Sure.
But before we do anything, I really need you to explain to those persons who may not know what is Bufford, what it is, its purpose, and why it came about, and who can or cannot be a member.
Okay, very well. The acronym Bufford, BUFERHD, stands for Belizeans United for Equal Rights at Home and the Diaspora. And to be honest, Zenaida, this came about just because of a report I got one afternoon. I think it was May the 19th. It speaks to the very fundamentals of our democracy. The Constitution, Zenaida, and Belizeans. I want people to understand this. The Constitution of this land, it's not Derek Aikman that says the vote should be secret. It's no predecessor or political party or politician. It is our Constitution that says the ballot must be secret. And so that's a safeguard that the Constitution provides to us. And so the bottom line is the ballot is not secret. We proved that on the 13th. But I just want to put a little caveat in there. We didn't just jump to go to a public simulation. We first attempted to get a gathering, a meeting of the 5 political leaders of the country, including the current Prime Minister, the current leader of the opposition, and the leaders of the other 3 parties, the BPP, the VIP, and the Belize Green Party. We had hoped that we could have had a private simulation with the 5 key people in the country. And hopefully we could have achieved the same thing in that private simulation as we did at St. Mary's Hall, with the hope that the Prime Minister, being so intimately exposed to it right before his very eyes, would have hopefully reacted immediately and swiftly to set such a gross wrong. Because this is not even a wrong. This is a breach. This is a betrayal. I'll go as far as saying this is a betrayal of a nation. I mean, this is a betrayal of a people that we are presiding over in Belize. We are the authorities that are presiding over election after election, over a system, over a voting process that should be secret and is not. And let me tell you, they have known for a long time that it is not. But they continue to perpetuate the lie that it is. So much so that the average Belizean believes that lie. Even today, even after the simulation has proven beyond any doubt that the vote you can tell how every single person votes in this country. And there were those, including my good friend Brother Nuri, who even up until the last comment I heard him made on the talk show was saying about going back into the ballot box after the vote and all of that. You don't need to go into any ballot box after any vote, Zenaida. Yes. You tell this right at the time of the counting. If people recall the simulation at St. Mary's Hall, the polls closed at a certain time. We counted the votes. You need to take a break.
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. let us go to our first break, and when we come back, we're going to continue hearing from you.
No problem.
All right.
Ask any landscape professional who they depend on for professional grade power tools, and the answer is always the same: Echo. Ask any dealer who offers the most powerful, most durable, and most reliable equipment in the business, and they'll tell you Echo. Then ask yourself, doesn't your lawn and garden deserve the professional's choice? Echo. The best outdoor power equipment you can buy.
Tell Bridges nobody try, cause a smarter run the show. Every time them a try, say switch my provider, me say no. Me no want your plan, nobody want your plan. Bridges tell we don't want your plan, we don't want your plan. Nobody want your plan, cause smarter run the nation. Me no want your plan, nobody want your plan. Bridges tell we don't want your plan, we don't want your plan. Nobody want your plan, cause smarter run the nation. Smarter want the best plans. Make you choose between this one and that one. Smart 4G are the best one. Me no got time for digital one. Viber, Facebook, Snapchat, send videos and voice clipping on my WhatsApp. Smart and rapper, we know nice phone and we want it. Smart, bringing people together. Glamour glasses.
Buying or selling land can be a daunting experience. Don't leave things to chance. When buying or selling land in Belize, seek the professional real estate services of Moya Shepherd and Company Limited. Benefit from our extensive local and international network to find your dream home or to move your property from selling to sold. Our land consultancy services also include appraisals, conveyances, registrations, surveys, transfers, title searches, and the preparation of all other legal documentation and land transaction processes. We are located at 5 miles Philip Coulson Highway. Give us a call at 223-4465 or visit us at www.realestatebz.com.
Welcome back to the Zenaida Moya Show. We have been having a very informative, lively discussion with Mr. Derek Aikman, founder and president of Bufford. Now, we have certain things we need to ensure that come out, Derek. We need to know, for example, that the significance of the secret ballot, because it may seem to everybody that, or some people may say, listen, I go to vote in my red or my blue or my green or whatever color orange shirt. I go with my shirt. Why does my why does my ballot need to be secret? But then again, you know, you have other persons. So, and there may be certain persons who go there in a shirt, but still don't vote the way how they were paid to vote. Because I'll say paid, because in some instances, that's what happens.
Yeah. Well, you took the word out of my mouth that the color T-shirts is by no means a true indicator of how people are voting.
That's
people
true.
have become very, very talented. They work for one party, they wear the shirt of that party, But when it's time to vote, because they are beholden to the other party, they will change that shirt and put on the party shirt.
Yep.
But all of that really, in a sense, Zenaida, to me is irrelevant. The point I made earlier, to me, is the fundamental point. The Constitution provides that our ballot must be secret. And I think the writers of our Constitution had good wisdom when they enshrined that in there, because if politicians, Belize is a very small country, and certainly myself, and I'm sure you, Zenaida, and many others know what it's like to be victimized in this country. I mean, victimization is a way of life here. And so I believe the Constitution was protecting, or intended to protect, our citizens from politicians who are prone to victimization. Because if the politicians know that A, B, and C did not vote for him or her, then A, B, and C will not get the job, will not get the scholarship, will not get the land. Their children will not get certain benefits, whereas those who they know voted for them will. Mr. Price was very open. I will reward my friends and punish my enemies. And there was basis there. He knew exactly. He knew from back then who was voting for him and who wasn't voting for him. And he certainly punished those who didn't vote for him and rewarded those who did. And I'll go as far as saying in the 60s, in the 50s and the 60s, when I was just a child, from my own historical reading and research, a lot of the Belizeans who fled Belize and became diaspora at the time were fleeing the victimization of a repressive PUP government under George Price. That was just the truth. And a lot of this had its basis in this very same manner that they were able to tell how people voted. They knew how you voted from back then, and they continue to do so today. Back then, it wasn't for money. It was your way of life was being compromised depending on how you voted. Now, it's a commercial. Politics in Belize has become a commercial venture. The party with the most money will become the government. They may have the worst candidates, the worst leaders of a nation. But if they have the most money commercially, they will buy and win the elections. Exactly. That's just where we are right now. And both major parties are guilty of having bought elections. I will stop right here. I was telling somebody the other day, the authorities, especially elections and boundaries, talk about the fraud and if it can be proven that you are receiving money or giving money, what an offense that is. Well, I will dare say one of the biggest frauds that I can look at was 2 elections ago, when just before the election, 2 members of a certain political party just suddenly stepped down. And everybody knows they stepped down because of the influence of the other party who intervened and made conditions such that these 2 people stepped down. And what happened? The elections were won by the very 2 numbers of seats that had these 2 people stayed in their party, the party who won would not have won. Now tell me what bigger fraud and corruption stared us in the very face than in that situation. You never heard a word from the church. You never heard a word from any authority denouncing that shameless commercial buyout of that election victory. That was a I don't even know the words to describe it. It was a travesty. It was a disgrace. It cheapened the entire country of Belize. That is what it did. It cheapened all of us to a place where from henceforth it was etched forever in history that who's got the money will rule the people of Belize. And if they have to buy the candidates from the other party, they will. That's what was proven in that election. And everybody kept their mouth shut right up until today. And we glorify those who were responsible for that act. that was the most scandalous modern day history commercial buyout of an election if I've ever seen. But those same people condemn the $100 that are being given to voters. That is also wrong, and don't get me wrong. But how can you condemn them when you in your high office, you are doing it at a scale that is far and beyond any $100. We're talking about millions of dollars. Mm-hmm. So please, man, please.
Eric, as a former elected official and a minister of government, when exactly did you become aware that the ballot was not secret?
Zenaida,
and did you do anything to try and bring that to the forefront beforehand?
Zenaida, I'll be very fast because I see time is going. My first election was in 1980. I had just come back from studying in August of 1980. There was the city council elections in November of 1980. I was fully UDP, hook, line, and sinker at that time. Sometimes I wonder what was wrong with me from then. But anyway, the party didn't even want to run because they were so devastated over the defeat of 1979, just 1 year previous. But it was the Honorable Philip Goldson who said to all of them at King Street by Playboy Club, "You're going to what? Boycott an election and not run because you lost a year ago? Listen, man, pull up your bootstraps and do what you're here to do as the opposition and run the darn election." So Mr. Goldson's influence prevailed and we ran. We all lost, myself included, obviously. 3 years later, though, in 1983, so at the time of the counting, I was totally oblivious to anything about being able to tell how people vote. But in 1983, when I then again ran as part of the UDP slate again for city council elections, and thank God we all won that time, but I was at St. Mary's Hall where the count usually takes place, and I was just walking around the room and I noticed, he's departed now, but well-respected past teacher of mine, Omera Escalante, a very long-standing PUP operative. He was at the count, and I noticed he was just sitting down, and as the ballots were being shown to the table, he was just writing down numbers on a paper, just numbers.
Wow.
So I went to him right in the middle of the thing. I said, "Mr. Omera, what is it you're doing?" And he looked at me kind of surprised and asked, "You don't know what I'm doing?" I said, "No, I don't. That's what I'm asking you." So he said, "Anyway, I can't explain that right now. I'm too busy." And he continued. Anyway, wow. I continued walking around. There was another gentleman who, this person I did not know, doing the same thing, just writing down numbers. And I said, "Sir, what? You're the second person tonight I've seen doing this. What is it you're doing?" And again, like Mr. Escalante, he said, "You don't know what I'm doing?" It's like, "Where are you?" I said, "No, I don't know." I said, "Can you?" And he said, I'll tell you." And he was kind enough to stop his process and pull me one side and explain it. I remember the lady in the Senate inquiry asked Mr. Salazar, "You want it at like ABC or 1, 2, 3? Well, let me tell you, this was like both ABC and 1, 2, 3. It was so simple. He said, "Mr. Aikman, they know from inside the polling station, when the polls open, the political scrutineers, they know exactly the ballot number on the ballot book that the presiding officer is starting the election process with, because he has to tell them the book that he's starting and the serial number on the ballot book. So we know before the polls open that they're going to start, let's say, for argument's sake, let's say YWC polling station. So the presiding officer in there at the beginning of the thing is saying, "We're going to start. I have my first ballot book here with 500 ballots, and it's numbered 001 to 500. That's what we're starting with. Everybody agree? Okay. So you know that when Zenaida Moya walks in, if she's the first voter to come in, once she has been cleared and the presiding officer tears that first ballot to give to Zenaida, you don't need a rocket scientist to tell him that Zenaida is getting ballot number 001. And because they pull the ballots sequentially, see, I have tried to get them to not pull my ballot sequentially. They've always denied me that right. No, we must pull it sequentially. So the whole world knows it's pulled sequentially. So by the end of the day, if you're vigilant, you know that if Cliff Lewis comes in as a second voter, Cliff gets 002. If Derek Aikman comes in as the third voter, I get 003. Just like that until you finish that book of 500. So let's stop at 500. So now it's the time for the count, the night. And by law, the counting officer must first show the counters and the scrutineers from all the political parties at that counting station. He must, let's go back to 84. So it was, the ballot would have been Derek Aikman or George Price. So the first thing they do is they separate the ballots. So all the reds will be here and all the blues will be here after they have reconciled that the ballots correspond with the number of stubs from which the ballots were torn in the ballot book. All right, so now it's the time for the count. And of course, by this time, just as in 84, the reds for Derek Aikman, praise God, were so high compared to the blues for Mr. Price. Even before the counting started, you already know that who had won, just from the different levels of the pile. Exactly. But now the counting starts. So the counting officer must, he'll say, okay, we'll start with the reds. So he pulls up the first ballot in front of him. It says, Derek Aikman. So he has to show the front of the ballot so the scrutineers facing him can be assured that indeed that X is by Derek Aikman's name. The X is in such a manner that it's not also half into George Price's name, which could then make it an undecided or not a very clear vote to protest it. So first they show you the front so that you can accept that it is a Derek Aikman vote, and then they have to show you the back, because if the signature of the presiding officer who issued the ballot paper, if his signature is not on that ballot, that's a spoiled ballot and that vote cannot be counted. So by law, you've got to show each person there that that signature is there. But, and this is where the number on the ballot becomes the issue, the signature of the presiding officer sits right on top of the number of the ballot paper in bold capped numbers. It's not in little fine print, you know. It's huge numbers that are there depicting the ballot number. So, just as Mr. Escalante was doing from 1983, Belizeans, all you have to do is have an agent at the counting writing just those numbers. And you know all these numbers are for the UDP. So when they count the blue, it's for the PUP. So you begin to write. 001 was the first one there. 124, whatever it is, you just write down the numbers. That's all you do, as Mr. Escalante was doing. Just the numbers. And then, that's your UDP voters. Then they will count now the PUP votes. So you take out another paper, and that's your PUP votes. And you write the numbers down from the back of the ballot when they're showing it to you. And all you need to do when that count is over, you don't need to go into no ballot box 1 week later. It is done within minutes after the count. Just as what we did at St. Mary's Hall. Within 5 minutes on the night of the 13th, I was able to stand up and call each voter who voted that night by name and told them how they voted. And the 3 of them who spoiled their ballots, I was able to tell them how you spoiled it. Because one of them drew a line completely through the yes and the no, and the others just left it blank. But I was able to tell each one what they did. Because all I needed to do was to go back to the list that the scrutineers write down in the morning, the ballot number given to each voter. You just have to then go and match which of those numbers belong to which voter. And
that's it.
You all know. So if they all showed up on the UDP pile, you know that they all voted UDP. They all voted for Derek Aikman. And if those numbers, when you find the names that match the numbers that voted for George Price, you know that they all voted for George Price. Ladies and gentlemen, I know, and I want you to understand this, I know how difficult it is, especially for a 50, 60, 70-year-old Belizean who have sworn by this process for all these years. I understand how difficult it is to even fathom the possibility that your vote all these years were never secret. It's a horrifying reality. And I understand that it is more comfortable to be in denial, to say, no, it's secret, because it is too frightening to accept that it is not. You have lived this. You have believed this because your prime ministers and your premiers and your leaders and your chief elections officers and your election and boundaries commission chairmen and chairwomen have told you all these years that the vote is secret. But they're lying to you. They have lied to you. And to answer your question, did I ever try? That same night at St. Mary's Hall, when I first found out from this guy, who did I go to? I went immediately to Manuel Esquivel, who was the party leader. And I said to him, Mr. Esquivel, do you know what I just found out? They can tell how you vote. And it's true, it is so simple. I was dismissed. Like many people today dismiss you. That's nonsense. That can never be so. That's utter nonsense. But I went further than that. Sandra Coy and I, Sandra says she did it even before me. I wasn't aware of that. That's not important right now. But I remember engaging years later with Sandra Coy to say, guess what? We're going to take the bull by the horn and we're going to bust this thing wide to the public. But what happened? Roy Young was the chief elections officer at that time. And Roy Young and the whole Elections and Boundaries Commission started a campaign to discredit Sandra and I, that we don't know what they talk about and we just want to destabilize, as some people are doing in 2017. Nothing has changed. Yeah. But the difference in 2017 and whatever year it was back then when we just scoured and bowed out and just went silent is because I am sufficiently mature now. I have experienced the corruption in the election process. A lot of you don't know what I went through in 1984 to defeat George Price, you know. If you think it was a clean election back then, there's nothing from the truth. And it was the same Roy Young that I had to encounter. He was the chief elections officer. When they split the Freetown division into Caribbean Shores and Freetown, man, they padded that Freetown list with every PUP vote you can think of. There were PUP voters at houses, at addresses that did not exist. Bushy lot with 20 voters registered there, all PUP. The dividing line is St. Thomas Street. And this is no disrespect to these two people because I like them. No, I have no problem with them. But they're known PUPs and they were loyal to George Price. So Billy Musa and his wife Rose Musa, who still live where they live today in front of the fisheries, Roy Young had them on the Freetown list in 1984, even though the dividing line was St. Thomas Street. Now look how far past St. Thomas Street Billy Musa and his wife lives. Asad Shuan, who lived on Princess Margaret Drive past St. Thomas Street, he too was on the Freetown list. And Roy Young went to court. Now he's the chief elections officer. Went to court to defend the integrity of that list to the judge and swore under oath that every voter on that list was bona fide, legitimate, and that none was fraudulent. And because I knew he was lying, I lost my temper one day in the court and said, "You are lying." And he said, right there from the witness stand, "You want me to beat you?" No, I was a very skinny kid at that time with a big afro, but my back, I was so skinny, my belly was touching my back. And Roy was this tall, strong man. But when he said, "You want me to beat you?" I said, "Well, let the fight start right in here." And I charged after him in the witness box. And Mr. Singh, Judge Singh, had to close down the court and call us in and gave us a due good lecture and said, if we ever try that again, he's going to dismiss everything I said. But while he scolded us and he upheld the law, if it wasn't for the integrity of Mr. Singh, Judge Singh, I would never have known what it was to would have been to defeat George Price, because the PUPs had Lois Young, Derek Courtney, I could name Edwin Flowers. The top brass PUP were in court fighting to keep that list without a name being struck off. I went to our legal advisor at the time, who was Dean Barrow. Sole Arguez was with me. She is my witness that I'm not lying. Dean's office at the time was at the Beacon on Church Street. When I found out the fraud, I went to him first as the legal advisor for the party. I said, Dean, I have a problem in Freetown. I have over 370 odd names on the list that are illegally on there, that shouldn't be there. Dean said, I don't believe in idiosyncrasies. You have to deal with that on your own. And Soli and I packed up our voters list. We walked out of the Beacon's office. And right then I decided, I said, God, just show me what I'm to do in this fight. Because obviously I have to fight it alone. So I was there day in, day out at court with 7 top PUP lawyers at age 24. I only turned 25 on the 15th of November, 1 month before the elections. You know, when I was fighting the whole PUP army, I was 24 years old, not a legal brain in my head. But God showed me. They don't live at those addresses, Derek. Register some letters to those addresses where by law they have to sign to receive those letters. And if the postman not find them, the postman have a right that they don't live here, there. And that's exactly what I did. And so even the people who were supposedly living at fraudulent addresses, but they really didn't live there because they wouldn't be at home when the mailman got there. The mailman was able to interview the occupants of the house, not always the person who is colluding to cover the fraud. And he was able to write on those letters, John Brown does not live at this address, has never lived. Or John Brown comes here from PG only on the weekend, but has never lived here. And things like that. And when I presented it to the court to Mr. Singh struck out 367 names off that list, including Billy and Rose Musa and Asad Schumann and all of them, and told Roy Young, no, you put them on the correct list where they belong. Did you think it stopped there? The night before the elections, this is classic, a lot of people have never heard this Zenaida. Around 11 o'clock, the night when we got the list that will open the polls 7 o'clock the next morning. You see, when the good Lord, the guide, God tell you, Derek, don't you ever take your eyes off that list. Don't you, every time it changes, you make sure you vet it. And sure enough, when we got the list at 11 o'clock that night, they had taken off the 367 names that the judge had struck out in the court, you know. But they added over 300 names of PUPs from Port Loyola onto the list that will be used 7 o'clock in the morning when the polls open. But thank God that he gives me the determination that he does. My wife and I, she's my witness. We went to the corner of Castle and Lancaster Street. That's where Judge Singh lived. I was embarrassed. We got the man up out of his bed in his pajamas. And I said, Mr. Singh, sir, I have bad news. They took the names off the list that you struck out in court. That they did. But they've added over 300 more out of Port Loyola onto the Freetown list that will be used in the next morning. Mr. Singh said, what? I said, sir, I'm telling you, we have just gone through it. He picked up the phone right there. I mean, the man he saw the diligence with which I was going through this thing. He picked up the phone and he said, Royal, let me tell you something. It has been brought to my attention that the Freetown list that we're supposed to start the election with at 7 o'clock has on 300 odd names from Port Loyola. I have been made aware who they are, who the names are. And I'm telling you, if you do not remove these 300 names and produce a new Freetown list by 7 o'clock tomorrow, the accurate Freetown list as I have written on in the court, then the polls will not open at 7 o'clock in the Freetown division in this country. 5 o'clock, we got the list again. And the names had been removed. The Port Loyola PUP names had been taken off. And so what we had at the 11th hour was the true list that Mr. Singh had signed off that day when he struck off the 367 off the Freetown register. Ladies and gentlemen, the rest is history. You know how many votes I won by that night? 306 votes. This was a calculated, premeditated plan that the elections and boundaries people, with the chief elections officer, with the government of the day, had planned to ensure that George Price would win his seat by any means whatsoever out there. And I will tell the UDP now, if you have not learnt, that what happened to you in 1979, when you all thought that the party would win, and I thought they would have won too. I was studying, and I came home that day just to work for Dean Lindo in Fort George. Tansasa had a flight that arrived at 7 from Miami in Belize and departed at 7 for Miami. I arrived, and the customs officers at the airport, the immigration, everybody was peace, victory, victory. I mean, victory, you could smell it, you could taste it. It was in the air. There was no way PUPs could win that election. But what happened? Like flies, one by one that night. The first one was Paul Rodriguez, then Dean Lindo, one by one. I don't know how I ended up at Ned Vasquez's house on Albert Street, where Channel 7 is. That's where they were living then. I didn't know who Ned Vasquez was. I don't know who the people were. But I ended up there. Zenaida, Belizeans, let me tell you, for the first time in my life, I saw big man and woman bar. With every result that came over that radio that night, people were fainting. They had to bring them back with green alcohol, massage. No, I'm serious. People take politics. People,
they do.
I thought people were going to have a heart attack because the UDPs were so sure that they would have won that election, and one by one, they dropped like flies. But, and you hear all sorts about disappearing ink and all that. It had nothing to do with that. They had simply padded the divisions that they knew they needed to pad to bring home the PUPs where they knew they were weak, because it was a UDP wave. If things had gone fairly, the UDPs would have won that thing a landslide. But see, we always underestimate the PUP. We always do. And they were crafty enough to do the study, do their math, do their homework, and take this from this division, that from that division, pad the candidates that they knew were vulnerable. That's why the late Harry Courtney beat the popular Ken Tillett by eating one vote. You see? But the PUPs knew how weak Courtney was against Ken Tillett, so they padded the division to bring him up to par with Ken Tillett. But it still wasn't enough. He had to eat a vote. But he became the minister, and Ken Tillett lost. Notice what happened with Lindy Rogers. Now, Lindy Rogers was unquestionably one of the most popular politicians for the PUP. But they took so many voters from him to put in other divisions to help other people. They took too much. And a novice, a political novice like Pearl Thompson, defeated Lindy Rogers that night. Why? Because they took too much of Lindy's voters from him. You see. But ladies and gentlemen,
Yes.
I know you had told me that you want to talk about the whole registration process.
Yes.
And if we can jump to that, because this is why the registration process is
Yes.
so important in this country. You see a lot of people, even the political leaders
Because-
of parties, clamoring for re-registration. I am with you. I am clamoring with you for the re-registration, because it is something that the Constitution, just like the secret ballot, the Constitution provides for the timely re-registration in this land. So for it to be arbitrarily disrespected by the powers as it has been done right up until recently is unacceptable and should not be accepted and tolerated by our people. It should not. However, I hasten to advise you, political parties, that unless your party is so organized and fortified with the resources needed to monitor and regulate those dishonest election officers in those offices, not all of them are, but some of them are brutally dishonest. A lot of them are on the payroll of the political parties to turn a blind eye when you bring in people who you know don't live at those addresses that they're bringing them up. If you are not careful and vigilant, the same thing will happen when the re-registration process comes around. And the same fraudulent voters that are in Queen Square, that are in Messop, that are in every single division in this country. I'm not just singling those two, I'm just starting to name all divisions. The same fraudulent voters that sit in those same divisions around this nation today, before the re-registration, is going to end up right back on the list when the re-registration process is over. So the whole thing would have been futile if you do not have the means to methodically and strategically scrutinize the process to make sure that everyone that ends up on your list is a bona fide resident at every address on that list, because they are out to make sure that they pad those lists again through the same re-registration, and only you and your work can stop it.
Well, Derek, we're going to have to ensure that we discuss this, and I must say it has been extremely informative. That's why I have left you, because
and I didn't mean to.
I have my questions, further questions, because there are certain things we have to do. But there's one thing before we go.
Sure.
I have asked. This show has been it's the Zenaida Moya show, and I have had a pleasure hosting it. But I have been looking at having a co-host, someone that would also be able to lend, you know, a helping hand during times in terms of questions, and sometimes just for us to have discussions and so forth. And I have asked Mr. Derek Aikman.
Oh, this is the big surprise.
I have asked him to be my co-host, and as you can see, even myself, I appreciate what you brought today, and how much you have enlightened so many people, because I believe this is one of the most important shows that I have held, and I really appreciate it. And when I listen to you, I just love it. I appreciate every word you said, and how much you have educated me and taught me tonight, and so many of our viewers. And so I have asked Mr. Derek Aikman, I also call him honorable, he has done so much in his lifetime, to be the co-host, and he has, under Bufford, he has agreed to be the co-host on this show. So Derek you will be seeing him next week, Wednesday, at the same time. You will be seeing him, but you will not be seeing him as a guest. You will be seeing him as the co-host next
representing
to myself.
Bufford out there. That's why, you hear me? You have a voice now on this show through me, all right? So
that's right.
They better get ready for us.
And I'm okay with that, because as I told you, I support it. Just one certain thing, okay, and I'm okay with it, because we want the best person. We want really good people to be able to help us in Belize.
Yeah.
As long as they understand the battles and they truly want to help, I don't see anything wrong with it. But I want to say that we had more to come, so next week we're going to have to continue what we were discussing. And I want to go ahead and thank...
But I have just one, there's something that I will die if I don't make an announcement.
Okay.
I'll take 1 minute.
1 minute?
Yes.
Okay, because we only have...
I'll put out a press release tomorrow, but we're concerned about the poverty, the crime, the unemployment. We are committed to wanting to try and see how we can generate economic activity. Yes. To this end, I am launching on Saturday the first ever Belize Lakeshore Mall and Flea Market. Up exactly where I live there on the Boom Road, there's a huge lake a lot of people might not be aware of in the back. Huge lake. So we want to convert that into a Saturday activity, a flea market and a mall right along the lake, where people can come, bring their it's almost like an expo, where you bring your products, you rent your space, you sell your stuff, but we're going to have additional things like, you know, water ski, jet ski, canoe race, and so the lake is so big, beach volleyball, while the people are buying and selling their things. So please call 6210764 or 205-2243 to arrange to buy your space. And it's only $25 for the small man. people like Brody's and Save You and other large entities will be paying more, but it's a way to bring business, like bring the shopping to you there in the Belize rural area. And my hope is that this will become such a big event that every Saturday, the only place every Belizean will want to go is to the Belize
And
Lake
it will
Shore,
bring togetherness. I
Lake
can
Shore,
see it bringing,
mall and flea market. It's going to be exciting. So
Yeah.
please come out. Buses will leave. There are the buses leaving the city from Cinderella Plaza and from Pongyard Bridge. It's only $1 for the bus each way, and it's only $2 for adults to enter the grounds and $1 for children. So.
All right, thank you, Derek.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for being a guest on this show, and I'll be welcoming you
last
next
time,
week.
no?
Yes, as
Okay.
a co-host. And just to inform the viewers that the repeat of this show will be on Sunday, 12 noon on Prem Television. Of course, you can always watch a version, the live stream version, on the Zenaida Moya Show Facebook page. Thank you to our sponsors, Belize Electricity Limited, Universal Hardware, Smart Belize, and Moya Shepherd and Company Limited. Thank you to our technical staff, Cliff, Abdullasif, Dejanira, Thompson. Thank you to our viewers. You have been wonderful, and continue to give us your comments, your feedback. I will see you here next week, same time, well, at 8.
We will see you.
We will see you. Yeah, I have to start saying we will see you 8 p.m. next week. Have a wonderful day. Thank you, Kelvin and Natalia, for inspiring me to do this show. Have a safe and wonderful week. And I do hope, because I did say that I would have mentioned it with Kelvin, just anybody who knows about Kelvin Usher, to please contact 667-4795 or 630-0611 or 600-8541. We know what it is to have a child, and at the end of the day, to not know where he is. I'm sure it's extremely devastating. So please, 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 let us get this solved quickly. God bless you all.